Hi, it's Maria from As Ripeness Comes. This is going to be short, please. May it be short. There's a lot of, I'm reminded today of our longing towards love, to love and to be loved. And there's some landscaping that's happening, yard maintenance mostly, that's happening around the property today. I live in an apartment that's in a house. There's another apartment next in this house as well. And there's some work going on in that apartment and all this tending that's happening outside. And I was about to go out and run some errands today when one of the maintenance crew pointed out this little, looks like a fledgling bird on the lawn beside the driveway. And a little bird seemed lost and stunned, and maybe it fallen out of a tree, but it was at least 10-15 feet away from any tree. But it might have been frightened by all the noise and all the people and the activity, and who knows. In any case, I think the landscaper, felt some relief when he was able to sort of let me know about this little baby bird. And so I took over, looking after it. But think about that impulse in any healthy human, where that spark of divinity has not been knocked out completely and into darkness and evil. That little spark of wanting to care for something small and helpless and lost is a pointer to our true nature. And to me, that's what we're meant to be. We're meant to love our neighbors. We're meant to love those around us. We're meant to be loving. We're meant to love our enemies. And so and to care about each other. And I think that's beautiful. It's so beautiful. If you see that impulse in yourself to want to care for a small little bird that is lost and alone or frightened or wounded, maybe stay with that a little bit, because that's part of our true nature. And what you may find underneath, which is underneath for me, is some sadness that I'm not in control. I can't do all of that. I can't take care of every little bird or every human or every forest or and sometimes not even take care of things in my own life. I'm not in control. We're not in control. And it can be a grieving to recognize that we're not in control. And yet there's that little spark of Christ nature in all of us, in us. And if you've ever had that experience of finding a little wounded creature, a little lost creature, tune into that memory and feel, what do you feel? What comes up? I'd be curious what comes up. For me, there's like an impulse to want to save. And then there can be an impulse that is followed, that starts with love, and you follow an impulse. And, what if that impulse and that leads to an action that actually isn't helpful to a little bird? I've learned that you're not supposed to feed or give water to baby birds. It can actually kill them. But in our innocence and in our love, we can create harm. And I mean, look around in the world at all the people who are actively, you know, saying that they're speaking from love and they're trying to save and fix, but they're also generating hatred and harming others in the process and denying the rights of others. And then there's deceit and lies and manipulation and shaming and canceling that comes out of that. And that's a distortion, you know. And you know, there, and also it can be this wanting to be love and yet just misinterpreting what that means, and then wanting everyone to be like you, wanting to follow your playbook, and you know, or join your club. And if you don't belong to that club, then you're, you know, whatever you are, you're not one of us, you're not a lover, you're a fascist or whatever. And these kind of distortions happen across all opposites, you know, all across all categories, and you know, across the political spectrum, you know, between men and women, various groups within. And a lot of activism claims to be focused on love, but there's a lot of willful or ignorant blindness to what is actually being created, the consequences of love that's distorted. And I think some of that is that we're unwilling to look at and feel what's underneath those impulses. So today with that little bird, I had an impulse to rescue it. I put it in a little plant pot with a cloth underneath, dish towel, and I was going to take it to a rescue. I contacted the rescue. That's when I found out that fledglings don't typically have long tail feathers, so my thought that maybe it couldn't fly because it didn't have tail feathers was probably wrong. So I was ignorant to some facts, and maybe it was just stunned and that's why it didn't fly away or move, or you know, maybe it needs to like launch off of a branch in order to fly at this point. I don't know. So there's a lot I don't know, and yet my impulse towards love and saving that little bird, you know, I moved it from where it was. You know, the landscaper, you know, we all created this, you know, environment. Maybe this little bird was terrified. Who are all these large things around me, talking to me, crouched down? Where's my mama? Who knows what happened? And with all the landscaping, I mean, I think it would frighten away all the adult birds too. So there are no parent birds around. And you know, I put this little pot with the bird in it in my car. I was going to take it to a rescue. Then I found out probably not needing rescue, and I moved it with the pot under the closest tree from where they'd found it, and into some shade. But I put the pot on its side so at least it had like a little shelter. The dishcloth is in there, but it's far enough away from where any, you know, power tools, landscaping might be done. I will check on it later, but I don't know if I impaired the possibility that this baby bird would be reunited with its parents because I moved it. I didn't touch it with my hands. I used gloves, but maybe it had the best chance if we had just left it alone. Now, I think it was wise that we be aware that the little bird was there so we didn't stomp on it or something, harm it otherwise. But there is that longing towards love, towards care. It's compassion. We feel the suffering. We want to, our hearts go out. Our hearts are beautiful. And it's not our heart so much that's the problem. I think in the Bible it says, the heart can deceive us. And it can when we're not free in every other way. If I have all these neuroses and unresolved trauma, everything gets distorted. It's like, if you have a spinal deformity or curvature, everything else has to adjust to that curve and that change. So, when we are not loved well, when we are not whole and healed from whatever, mother or father wounds, trauma, neglect, abuse, when we're operating from a paradigm and a map that, the destiny is love, but the map is distorted. And we can't get there from here. So this is why it feels to me that emotional and inner work is really important, to get to know ourselves, just to notice the thoughts, to sit with the sensations and emotions in the body, to sometimes pause in stillness and ask the Holy Spirit to show me, like, what is this about? And to be patient and sit, wait for the insight and the knowledge, self-knowledge to appear, because it's a beautiful, beautiful part of who we are and what we are, and that impulse is real and right, and yet that alone isn't what comes into play. We bring all of ourselves into the situation, and we bring all of our history and where we are still not free. Like I think about we're all sort of tied up in knots. Tied up in knots of suffering, and it does eventually ought to play out in the body, right, with illness and etc. But it's emotional, it's energetic, it's somatic, and and thoughts are part of that, beliefs are part of that. So when we're all tangled up and bunched up in these knots, because we haven't examined them, we haven't addressed these repressed emotions or suppressed emotions, especially repressed emotions. They're like ticking time bombs, and they distort everything, even when it's repressed joy. So think about that. You could have repressed anger, and you walk around just pushing it down, maybe not even conscious that you're pushing it down. It just becomes the default. And then one day somebody says something and bam, you explode like a volcano. That's repressed. Think about, I think I had repressed anger towards my mother for sure. I could talk to her about things, but I couldn't from a place of anger. I didn't have permission to feel anger. And so what happens there, for a lot of women have repressed anger. It leads to autoimmune disease, where we're attacking ourselves because we couldn't defend our boundaries or protect ourselves, or get angry when there was a boundary violation, when somebody violated us in some way, as children or as adults. And so we turn that anger inwards towards ourselves, and then we become depressed, and sick. There's a high degree of correlation between repressed anger and rage in women and autoimmune disease. Most autoimmune disease happens in women. I think 10% of the population, the last time I checked, 10% of women had autoimmune diseases. So even joy and love, so even joy and love can be repressed when you haven't been loved well, when it was conditional love. You start to learn, you can learn that you're unlovable. You can start to learn that nobody wants your love. So you hold back, you repress, and it becomes again a way of being. And with anything that is repressed, and it can be sadness, it can be grief, it can be vulnerability. Men repress, grief and maybe fear, vulnerability. They're not taught that it's normal or healthy for men to be vulnerable, to share, to to be whole, to be what they are, really. We're all distorted in some way. So think about, how we are so distorted in so many ways that we don't even know. We're not aware of. Like, I can be aware of how distorted things can be for me and still not be aware of other things, or even in the awareness itself may not resolve it. So there needs to be some looking at it and some attention given to it in a way that helps it to complete itself and be seen and acknowledged, and then come out the other side. So just want to say that our longing for love, to love and be loved, is beautiful. And yet, when we're not somewhat aware, and when we're somewhat unaware of what we are and the things that have shaped us and the patterns that are still running us, then that beautiful, pure, instinctual, and divine impulse can be sabotaged and distorted. It can actually become the opposite of what it is, because of our suffering knots or distortions. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say today. I hope something about that is worth considering. It's okay to sit with that sadness, with sitting with the impulse, finding a little bird. If you had a moment like that, most people have had some sort of moment of that, even if it's going to an animal shelter and seeing kittens or a puppy or a dog, or online seeing like an animal that's been rescued and maybe has mange or has been struck by a vehicle. When we see those things, it pulls at our heartstrings, and that's beautiful, and that's healthy. And then if we sit with that impulse in a personal experience, that little bird, and what is my response? What is our response when we're trying to save the world, when we're trying to be in control, when we're trying to help? Is it really helping? And then, that's not to beat us up with the shame stick. This is to make us aware that, love isn't enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. So we need to know ourselves. We need to heal. We need to address the knots. We need to look at the distortions in our map. I think of, when I think about the body and the self, I think of like a net, and you pull on the net this way and that way, and things fill up in the net over here, and all this tension and push and pull, this pull and stretch and movement happens. And think about the body being this and how it gets distorted, out of shape. And I think the fascia is like that. It's a direct correlation to that. And when we can loosen up and free these patterns and heal, then it's like, then things can flow through and be let go much more easily, and our responses and our ability to receive the wisdom of the Holy Spirit to be able to act in accordance with that love, with the highest possible good, then I think that is what is Christ-like. That is what is being asked of us. Because I see a lot of action in the world in the name of love, but I don't see love. Love isn't what is being demonstrated, and the outcomes and the fallout and the hatred and the celebration of violence these are the fruit. They're poison fruit. So I will leave us and all with that. And I think I may sit with that myself today. That little bird was a teacher. I'll check on it later. If the rescue gets back to me, maybe they can recommend what to do. At a certain point, I think I will just have to let go. But I truly hope, and I will pray. Actually, let's do a little prayer for that little bird. The thought of Saint Francis of Assisi is coming up right now. He was a lover of creatures. He loved them. They loved him. I think he followed his longing and pull towards love, and he was loved and he was loving. And if I can so ask, that aspect of God that is like Francis of Assisi, Saint Francis, please take care of that little baby bird. Please reunite that bird with its parents. Let that bird not be traumatized by its interaction with humans today and loud, noisy landscaping implements. May my actions be forgiven. May my impulse to help that may or may not have helped, that probably didn't help, be forgiven. May I learn from that. And I trust that the impulse to love and care for that little bird was our true nature, was pure, was beautiful, by the man who found the bird and didn't want to just ignore the bird and leave it, wanted to hand off responsibility for care for this bird to someone. And I'm grateful for him. I'm grateful for his loving spirit. And I'm grateful for this little bird showing up, reminding me just how, small and lost we all can be. And how being fixed and saved are not necessarily the solutions. Provide some safety, an appropriate environment, a little bit of shelter, some shade from the sun and the rain and the wind, and hopefully this little bird will find home. I pray that its parents, the mother and the father birds, find this little one, return it home, keep it safe, and that this little bird thrives, survives and thrives. God, you can do all things. And I surrender the care of this bird and the worry for this bird into your hands, so that it can be free. It can be free of the pull of my thoughts and my energy. And this doesn't mean that I may not check in on it later, but that I'm not ruminating, and that I'm not lending this worrisome energy towards the outcome of this bird. I know you love all creatures, big and small, the sparrow and the human being. So I petition you, if prayers have value, if my words have power through you, please take care of this bird. I'm ever so grateful for you, for knowing you, and for your wisdom in all things. Amen. All right, everyone, have a great day. Tend to your little birds as is appropriate. Acknowledge that the love in you and the impulse to care is holy. And examine what that creates in the world. Because I think we live with enough regret that creating more when we truly feel love in our hearts for a creature or people or situation. Can be a difficult reckoning. So have a great afternoon, evening, day, wherever you are in the world. whoever you are, if it's only me, have a good day. Remember that you're the beloved of the beloved. And every moment we are renewed and refreshed, and our troubles can be surrendered. Our troubles can be surrendered. Thank you.